I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and this is I-24 News. It is day 191 of the Israel-Hamas war, and Israelis are reeling after a major attack from Iran. On Saturday night, just last night, Iran launched a massive wave of missiles and attack drones at Israel from its own territory, in the first ever direct attack on Israeli territory by the Islamic Republic. Well, Israeli officials say that Iran fired over 300 projectiles at Israel, including a total of 185 drones. This is according to the New York Times, 110 surface-to-surface missiles, and 36 cruise missiles. Now, most came from Iran, although a small portion were launched from Iraq and Yemen. And Hebrew media reports that not one drone or missile actually managed to infiltrate Israeli airspace, and that the U.S., UK, and Jordan helped take down many of these drones. Now, despite this, 12 people were evacuated to the hospital with injuries, including a 7-year-old girl from Arad in southern Israel who was seriously wounded by missile shrapnel. She was sent to the operation room, and she is now in the pediatric intensive care unit. 8 people were also lightly wounded from shrapnel or while reaching shelter. Well, the Israeli Home Front Command says that even though the initial major scare is over, the campaign still has not ended, and that locals must be vigilant and attentive to the IDF Home Front Command instructions. School remains canceled nationwide, along with gatherings of more than 1,000 people, and workplaces are allowed to remain open as normal as long as there is access to a bomb shelter. These rules are going to remain in effect until 11 p.m. on Monday, and Israeli airspace has already reopened to landings and takeoffs after 7 hours of closure. Let's take a look at what our IDF spokesperson Hagari had to say about the latest news.
בוקר טוב. אמש איראן פתחה במתקפה נגד ישראל ושיגרה יותר מ-300 איומים מסוגים שונים. האיום האיראני פגש את העליונות האווירית והטכנולוגית של צה"ל,
superiority and the technology of the IDF together with the coalition who thwarted the vast majority of the threats. We thwarted 99% of the threats launched towards the state of Israel. This is a strategic achievement, an important one. Out of 170 UAVs, 0 have entered Israeli territory. Dozens were thwarted by Israeli fighter jets, our aerial defense system, and jets of our partners. Out of 130 cruise missiles, 0 have penetrated Israeli territory. 25 were thwarted by Israeli fighter jets out of our borders. Out of over 120 ballistic missiles on a number entered Israeli territory, and the rest were thwarted. They've hit the Nevatim air base and caused only light damage to infrastructure. As you can see now, the base is operating and continues its missions. In the image, you can see the landing route at the base. Iran thought it would be able to paralyze the base and hurt Israel's aerial abilities, but it failed. Israeli fighter jets continue to fly out of the base for missions on defense and offense, including the F-35 planes who are returning from the defense mission. In addition to the launches from Iran, there were a number of launches out of Iraq, Yemen. None of them have penetrated Israeli territory. In recent hours, dozens of rockets were fired from Lebanon towards Israel's north. There are no injuries. Fighter jets have struck Hezbollah targets across Lebanon, including Redwan force targets, while many other planes continue the defensive mission. In the past 6 months, we are operating with close cooperation with our partners headed by CENTCOM and the militaries of Britain, France, and other countries that have operated tonight. This cooperation has always been tight, but tonight it came into expression in an extraordinary manner, and with excellent performance of the Air Force and the intelligence headed by the Chief of Staff, Herzl Levy. The thwarting abilities of the aerial defense systems and the fighter jets have proven extraordinary professionalism and military and technology superiority. Thanks to all of these, the Iranian attack has been thwarted. To our regret, a 10-year-old girl was seriously wounded by shrapnel. We wish her a speedy recovery. Other than her, as we understand, there are no other injuries. This event is not over yet. We are still ready for developments. The instructions of the Home Front Command remain as they were. We must not conduct any educational systems regarding any changes. We will update you immediately with transparency and with responsibility, as we did before. Throughout the night, the cooperation of the public is remarkable. We must continue to do so without panic. We will do everything that is possible in order for the public to receive the information at the fast and most accurate manner. We have conducted a situational assessment. The IDF Chief of Staff has approved working plans. Iran has executed a very extreme move tonight, drawing the Middle East for an escalation. We will do whatever is needed in order to defend the people of Israel. In addition to the developments tonight, we do not forget for one moment the 133 hostages being held in Gaza. We will continue to do everything in order to return them home as quickly as possible.
איראן הצליחה הלילה להכניס את מדינת ישראל לחרדה ומקלטים.
So what comes next?
להגיב על המתקפה
האיראנית.
I think that
So what comes next? Well, U.S. President Joe Biden is going to be meeting with G7 leaders on Sunday to coordinate a, quote, united diplomatic response to Iran's brazen attack. Biden spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu this morning, where he reaffirmed America's ironclad commitment to the security of Israel. Well, we're also hearing reports that the U.S. president told Netanyahu that the U.S. is not going to aid any Israeli counterattack on Iran. And this also comes amid reported American fear that Israel could be irresponsible in its response and fail to update the United States as to how it plans to attack. But for now, the Israeli prime minister has posted a short message on X saying just the following: we intercepted, we blocked, and together we will win. Joining us now is our senior U.S. correspondent in New York, Mike Wagenheim. So, Mike, President Biden spoke overnight with Netanyahu. He says support to Israel's ironclad, but like I just mentioned, we're seeing multiple reports as to fears about how Israel could respond and whether or not the United States would continue to support Israel in that case. What can you tell us about that?
I mean, it's really not a huge surprise, although it might be shocking to read it in print. Not a huge surprise that President Biden would tell Prime Minister Netanyahu that the United States will not support any further retaliation here from Israel. It's Biden and his administration that's been trying to tamp down on regional tensions, try to go the diplomatic route, as Biden said in a statement late tonight, that they'll meet with G7 leaders tomorrow to try to find a diplomatic avenue forward here. And so the last message he wants to try to send here is that it's a green light on behalf of Washington for Netanyahu and Israel to carry out further retaliatory attacks here against Iran. So it's not as if, as we saw tonight with the United States, the UK, France, Jordan, Saudi Arabia. I mean, there's a huge storyline here to talk about, that Israel was not alone in defending itself against Iran. But it's different defending yourself than going on the attack once again. And I think Biden is trying to separate those two dimensions as clearly as he can.
Now, will this attack push the House of Representatives to perhaps bring the aid package to a vote?
I think there's no doubt whatsoever. I mean, there was pressure there to begin with, but with so many other domestic political considerations, it kind of fell off the map for a while. There's been an effort for a what's called a discharge petition, which essentially would force a House vote if it got the majority of House members to sign on to it, but not very many Republicans were willing to buck House leadership to do so. But now we're seeing from all angles, except for the far left, from all angles, pressure now on Speaker Mike Johnson to bring this up for a vote, not only from Senate leadership, which wants him to essentially adopt the Senate-passed bill for Israel and Ukraine aid, but we're seeing it now from both sides of the House, from pro-Israel stalwarts on the Democratic side to leadership on the Republican side. I think it's going to come up in one form or fashion. Speaker Mike Johnson now has a balancing act here. Is he going to bring up an Israel-only aid bill? Will he bring up the larger foreign aid package involving Ukraine and Taiwan aid in addition to Israel? Does he put it through a certain rules process so it's more palatable to maybe some of the hardliners in his caucus? That's what needs to be decided more than anything. But I think now the pressure is on here to bring it up in one form or fashion this week. And we already heard House Majority Leader Steve Scalise say that the House is rearranging their entire calendar this coming week, moving more message-laden items off the table in favor of now bringing up pro-Israel and anti-Iran legislation and resolutions.
Now, we understand that the UN Security Council is meant to convene at around 4 p.m. this evening, U.S. time. What can you tell us about what we can expect out of this meeting, if anything?
Yeah, it's confirmed. 4 p.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. Israel time. The UN Security Council will hold an emergency, a rare Sunday session here to discuss Iran's attacks. This meeting was called for by Israeli ambassador to the UN, Gilad Erdan, and approved by the president of the council this month, Maltese ambassador Vanessa Fraser. I think more than anything, the council will try to figure out a way, as Joe Biden has tried to do here, to make sure this doesn't explode more into a regional war. That's been the fear of the council throughout, the post-October 7th process, is how do we keep this to as little violence as possible. We've seen Hezbollah get involved, the Houthis. It's obviously grown now with Iran directly involved, launching attacks from its own soil. I think the Security Council here, the big discussion is going to be how do we start extinguishing these fires before it turns into something completely uncontrollable.
All right, Mike, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to turn now to our guests in the studio to kind of further discuss the latest developments. Obviously, there's a lot of fear starting late last night as to what kind of attack we were going to see from Iran. So far, we're seeing 99% of threats were intercepted. That's obviously really an incredible number, and it does show a display of incredible defense on Israel's part. But, what kind of message is this really sending to Iran, and what can we expect next?
Yes, so I think very importantly, it is important to judge this attack not by the failure of those missiles to reach these Israeli targets, but from the intent of Iran to hurt so many strategic sites in Israel, military bases, and this is what Israel needs to base its reaction to this attack on. It's very well that Israel has managed to thwart those many missiles and drones with the help of the US, the UK, France, and other countries that Israel for now does not mention. We can imagine what other countries are in the region that would assist Israel in thwarting these
Why don't
missiles.
you say their names? What are the countries that we're imagining?
Jordan would be the first example, of course. Jordan would not admit this publicly. That doesn't work with the public relations of operating alongside Israel while Israel is engaged in this war against Hamas in Gaza and the very complicated relations between these two countries. Nonetheless, Jordan is an important part of that defense as well. Also, standing between Israel and Iran to a large part of Israel's territory. Israel will need to react to this attack. There is no doubt. Israel has also, just before the attack, has mentioned that there will be symmetry, because if a strike emanates from Iranian territory, Israel will strike within Iranian territory as well, unlike the many attacks that we've seen from Iranian proxies throughout this war. There were other attacks from the proxies, as the IDF spokesman Daniel Hagari has mentioned, from Iraq and from Yemen. But this is the watershed moment, the fact that Iran has struck Israel with such a large amount of missiles, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones. Israel cannot stand still and not react to this. However, that response has to be coordinated with its partners.
Right. So the question then is, what kind of response can we expect from Israel? Because we are hearing reports from the United States, first of all, that the U.S. wants to have a very clear meeting as to what kind of response it can expect from Israel. And also, just fears that Israel could be harsher and not necessarily the smartest in its response, leading to a much larger war.
Well, the U.S. doesn't want to be surprised again. I mean, it was surprised once by Israel attacking the headquarters of the Revolutionary Guards in Damascus, so-called consulate in Damascus, and the Americans were very mad that they were not informed ahead of time. This is one thing, and they, as you said, they fear a reaction of Israel that might drag the United States into a regional war. I think that the United States is trying to evade. The fact is very clearly, I mean, the don't of Biden has turned into a don't to Israel. Do not do anything that can compromise the United States. So what are the choices? The choices are the following. The first option is, the American response to the Qasem Soleimani attack. After his killing, the Islamic Republic fired more than 100 missiles on the Ain al-Assad airbase, American airbase, and the Americans did not respond at all, and it was contained, and that was the end of it. And this is what we hear right now from the Iranian part side, saying that we have done our job and we are finished. So clearly, signifying to Israel that there is no intention to continue, and Israel will contain this attack and say, okay, let's move forwards. Then the whole thing with Iran would stop, according to the Iranians. But what are the other choices? The other choices are the weak links inside the alliance, the so-called evil alliance. It's the Houthis, the Iraqi, the pro-Iranian militias, the Syrian Hezbollah, and of course Hezbollah Lebanon. Hezbollah Lebanon could become the main target of Israel, and we have seen yesterday an increase in the air attacks against positions of Hezbollah. The Air Force has struck into an area, the Tufah area, which is deep inside Shiite territory, inside Lebanon, and this could be the response of Israel, not attacking Iran, but attacking its proxy.
All right, well, let's hear from Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, who spoke to the Israeli public earlier today.
מדינת ישראל עמדה הלילה בהתקפה.
I've recently completed an operational situation assessment with senior members of Israel's defense establishment. The state of Israel was attacked by Iran with hundreds of missiles and UAVs, and the IDF thwarted this attack in an impressive manner. Together with the United States and additional partners, we managed to defend the territory of the State of Israel. Very little damage was caused. This is the result of the IDF's impressive operations. The campaign is not over yet. We must remain alert and attentive to the instructions published by the IDF and Homefront Command. We must be prepared for every scenario. Having said this, we have thwarted the most significant wave of the attack, and we did so successfully.
So several questions here. First of all, we're hearing Israeli officials, the defense minister, and also the Homefront Command say that this initial major scare is over for now, but we still must stay vigilant and remain alert. What does that actually mean? Could we expect continued drone and missile attacks from Iran within the coming hours? Or for now, is Israel simply just preparing for a response?
Well, it seems if you listen to the Iranians, they say that this attack is over. If you believe anything that comes out of the Iranians, nonetheless, a senior commander in the Israeli Air Force was asked this morning whether the fact that Israel did so well in thwarting these attacks was not just basically attributed to the fact that Israel was on such a high alert, and what would happen if there is a surprise attack. We were waiting for many hours and even days before to this Iranian attack, so the readiness was at its peak. But what happens when Iran strikes without warning Israel, without sending all these messages? Well, according to the Air Force, Israel is always, at least the air defense systems are always on high readiness. Nonetheless, the presence of the American forces here were very significant, as to the statement that we just heard from Gallant, praising the defensive capabilities of Israel, but basically saying nothing about what Israel will do next. I understand that this will have to be decided by the cabinet, the wider cabinet, the security cabinet tonight has instructed Prime Minister Netanyahu, Defense Minister Gallant, and Minister Benny Gantz to make the decisions on behalf of the State of Israel as to the response to this attack, and we will see, as they're consulting right now as well, what that or how would that response look like.
Now, I just want to ask you about those who were involved in helping Israel ensure that these drones and missiles did not land within Israeli territory. We know that the United States, the United Kingdom, and also we're hearing reports that Jordan were involved in, shooting down many of the drones that were making their way towards Israel. But what other parties, what other nations in the region were involved, from what we understand, and what is their interest?
Well, in a way, you could say that the Emirates are very much involved in the whole system, the defense system that Israel has forged a year ago. I mean, a sort of Star Wars have been set on the ground and has been trained once and twice and thrice. So, I mean, this is more or less the participants, and Bahrain also is one of the main participants. And this is what we're talking about: Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Emirates. These are the countries that are involved. I'm not talking about Egypt because it's too far.
All right, we're going to turn now to our correspondent Pia Steckelbach, who is live from northern Israel. Pia, thank you for joining us. As we know, there were many sirens that went off throughout the night in the north of Israel, as we saw missiles and just general attacks launched from Hezbollah into Israeli territory. What do we know in terms of the latest? In terms of Hezbollah's actions, and what can we expect in the coming hours?
Right, Natasha. Well, when you looked at your Red Alert Siren app, the app that most Israelis have on their phone throughout the night, you would see that most of the attacks were centered on the northern part of the country, also the south. There was some sirens in the West Bank, but really most of it seemed to have been focused on the north because Hezbollah also joined the attacks. Hezbollah so far claimed 2 attacks throughout the night, launching Katyusha rockets to Golan Heights communities there. It says that it was a retaliation for Israeli activity throughout the night in southern Lebanon. There were reports about Israeli military activity, Air Force activity in the area of Kfar Kila. This morning, the Israeli army issued a statement saying that it struck a camp belonging to Hezbollah's Radwan forces in Jabba in southern Lebanon. This is what we're seeing the response to of Hezbollah. These 2 attacks, at least 2 attacks that Hezbollah claimed responsibility for. But you're right to say that there were much more alerts potentially also coming from those Iranian missiles and drones. Hezbollah, they're claiming to have launched Katyusha missiles towards Golan Heights communities. And this is just in line with what we've seen basically since October 8th. These cross-border attacks, the question is now, will Hezbollah use this chaotic, dramatic situation to escalate the attacks? And then the question is, how would this escalation look like? This is the question that we've been asking ourselves since the beginning of these almost daily cross-border tit-for-tat attacks. Now, Hezbollah might see this as another opportunity to join the attacks, to step up its attacks. So also tense hours are ahead here in the north. Residents have to a certain extent already become used to situations where they see alerts in the north almost on a daily basis. However, this is another dangerous situation that Hezbollah could use to escalate further. However, so far Hezbollah has claimed these 2 attacks onto the Golan Heights communities. There were no reports of injuries or damage so far, Natasha.
All right, Pia, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be back with you later on today with increased reports from the north of Israel. I'd like to turn back to our guests in the studio. just, a thought that comes to mind. Obviously, we saw major success on Israel's part in stopping these infiltrations of missiles and drones into Israeli territory from Iran. What message does this send to Iranian proxies and groups on the border of Israel, sorry.
As a fervent reader of Israeli press and media, Hassan Nasrallah must have taken into account the fact that 99% of those missiles were intercepted, meaning that his system facing Israel could be intercepted easily by Israel and could be attacked by Israel. This is the main lesson that the success in thwarting those attacks has infiltrated, in my view, Hezbollah's perception of how to conduct the war. He would prefer now using the rockets, which are difficult to intercept, or mortar fire, or anti-tank missiles, rather than using the long-range missile that can be intercepted. So this is a whole game changer, what happened yesterday, and it is a change in the strategy of Hezbollah facing Israel.
Now, we are hearing reports, or not reports, actually confirmation by Israel that Israeli airspace has been reopened as of 7:30 a.m. We're also seeing Jordanian airspace reopened. Does this mean perhaps that Israel is not planning on retaliating anytime soon, at least in the coming hours? And does this also mean that we can be assured that Iran is not going to be furthering its attacks?
There is no certainty of some sort. What we do know is that there are not any known drones or missiles on their way to Israel right now, and it goes together with the statement of the Iranians that this attack is over on their side. Obviously, Israel remains alert, and the Israeli response has to be very calculated. It is not something that comes from the gut, does not come from revenge. It has to be a strategic decision. This is why it is not something that will happen in the next half an hour. I can be pretty certain of that. It will be in complete coordination with the Americans and other partners that Israel speaks to right now.